We're going to move on now to meetings that perhaps are not in a boardroom or not in a normal meeting room. And when that happens, quite often people find that they're not quite sure really how to behave professionally. What is the business etiquette that they follow when they are in these situations? I have here some guidelines that will help you in those situations. So first up, we're going to take a look at when you yourself are the host. You or your company may be hosting a lunch or a dinner. And therefore, when you do this, you have to consider the preferences of guests. You have to really know your guests. Some guests may prefer to go to a place that is totally non-smoking, that is quiet, for example, or they may prefer places that have a bit of music in the background. You may understand that these preferences help those guests of yours have good meetings, and therefore your meetings may be a bit more productive, and the relationships and the whole tone of the meeting may be friendlier and may be geared more to successful business dealings. So consider the preferences of your guests. It could also be that your guests don't like a particular food. Perhaps your guests are coming from Germany, and it could be that they prefer to have Vietnamese food, of course, over German food. They want to really have a great feast of Vietnamese food, so their preference at this time is to have Vietnamese food. So consider that in your planning. It shows that you have very good business etiquette. Also, give specifics as well. When you are hosting dinners or meetings, etc., be specific about things. Tell people exactly where and when. Give them all the details so that there's no misunderstanding, so that they know where they should be and all the timing is correct, etc. They also may wish to know who else is coming, so give specifics about who is there and how long actually the luncheon or the dinner may take. Proper business etiquette would tell you to make sure that your reservation is reconfirmed. If it's a place that is difficult to get into, then you need to plan way ahead so not to disappoint your guests. And so therefore reconfirm and have that confirmation written down clearly so it is acknowledged. It's always good too, being professional, to arrive early. 10 minutes early is adequate, and go in and look at the table. Meet those people who are going to be serving at that table. Now let's remember, this is for a particularly important function, an important meeting. And so therefore you would give it that respect and attend to it more closely. So look at the table, make sure everything is in place, the right number of seats are there. Sometimes that can happen. Instead of putting 8 places at the table, maybe 7 are only there, and you don't want to be fussing around and rearranging the table as the guests arrive, or you don't want to be embarrassing those guests. Also meet the person who's taking care of your particular function today. That is important, so they get to see that you're there and things will go smoothly. Something else that is very, very great in business etiquette is to greet your guests at the entrance of the restaurant. Maybe outside you have somebody who might show them through, and then at the entrance of your function room or at the entrance to where they are coming, it could be the lobby that you're going to meet them in, then greet them there. The guest would come in first and go through the aisle to the best seat, and then you seat yourself on the left-hand side. This is the normal procedure, normal protocol. So this gives them the feel of importance, and they can see that you're being very professional. Next up, offer the menu to the guests, or indeed offer advice about the menu to the guests first. It may be that you know this restaurant very, very well, and you can give some recommendations, and you know that that particular item is very good and they'll be pleased. Another thing about the menu is to order easy-to-eat food. Easy to eat things that are, for example, not like crab. Sometimes you have to crack crab and you get messy and it takes a long time and people can't speak during the business meeting or the business lunch. So that's an idea to think about. And also limit drinks for yourself. Being the host, you need to be aware and on the ball and be controlling things and chairing the meeting perhaps. So limit your drinks. You would, if you are going to have wine, and that sometimes does happen at lunch or indeed it happens at dinners, then make sure you limit yourself because you have to take charge of this. And to be professional, you need to look professional and behave in that way as well. Now, it may be that you are the guest of a company at a lunch or a dinner meeting. And therefore, when the invitation comes, the best etiquette you can have is always reply promptly. Invitations are very important things because people are making a lot of plans concerning the particular lunch or dinner, and therefore you need to consider that. So a prompt reply is very good business etiquette. If you don't reply promptly, you get a reputation and people actually will stop sending invitations if you never reply or never reply promptly to invitations. So make sure you follow that step. If you have to cancel, then cancel because it's very urgent. Really, this is something to think about. You do have to give some consideration to the other party. People remember you if you cancel and it's not a really important reason why you cancel. People think about these things and it will impact the image they make up of you, the image that they will have of you. So only cancel when it's absolutely necessary. Be on time. Always, if you're invited, then of course you must be on time. If you are going to be late, you do need to get a message to your host about that. This is very professional behavior. So you would expect someone to be on time for you, so therefore you must be on time. It's very rude otherwise if you are not on time. Another thing to follow and to remember, and some people do not really know what to do when this happens, it is courtesy that if you arrive before your host for some reason, you are there, people can show you to the table, but be careful that you don't have anything or don't drink anything apart from water until the host arrives. This is common courtesy. This is the common practice to follow, and it shows that you are professional and that you're thinking of the other person. Another thing, and this is important, and I'm sure that you remember this and you know this. Do not order the most expensive item on the list. That is, of course, if you do get a list with prices. Sometimes your host may be very clever, and depending on the relationship that you have or the business that you are doing, you may find that you have a menu in front of you that has no prices. My goodness me, what do you do then? Suddenly you panic. You think, oh, I don't know what the most expensive thing is. What do I order? In those cases, then you can perhaps ask a recommendation from your host to help you out there. But if you do find that you have a menu and it's got prices, then really don't go for the most expensive thing. That is being rude. People will know that you're there just to get the lunch, just to use them as a way to have a good time. When you are the guest, and it's been established you are the guest, then you don't need to worry about the check. Don't take any notice of it. When it comes, you don't lean over to look at it, or you don't ask, oh, how much is it? Can I contribute? You do not do that. You just let the host take care of it. You are the guest. And do not offer to leave the tip part of that. You just do not offer anything when you are the guest. And of course, don't forget, at the end of that meal, or even at some time during that meal, if something is particularly good, you can thank the host and say how good this particular dish is. But most definitely, at the end of the business meeting, the lunch meeting, do say thank you to your host for such a spectacular meal and for having such a good time and being able to go through things over a lovely atmosphere together. These things are normal courtesy, but let me tell you, a lot of these things do get lost along the way. Some people do tend to forget some of these very important steps in their business etiquette, and then their image suffers. So how about you? Do you follow these steps? Are you aware of the importance of all of these things? And don't forget that you also do need to consider the culture of your business guest or your business host. You must consider their cultural inclinations as well and find that balance. So, at the beginning of a meeting that's over a lunch or a dinner, you can stand on the right side of your chair and enter that chair from your left. When there is a great gathering of people and perhaps there are toasts being made, etc. So when you go to sit down, you can stand at the right side of your chair and then move around and sit into your chair from the left. Remember too that napkins go into your lap as soon as possible. Try to take it off the plate. You'll notice that at various functions you've been to, the napkin is left on the plate or on the table. So try to take it off there and put it into your lap as soon as possible. Don't let it linger, because it means that you're not really getting involved in the meeting that's being held over a meal. It could be also that there are speeches to be made and toasts, as we say, toasts to be offered before eating and after dessert. This is the time that they normally take place. Both of these things are initiated by the host. So the host, when he is raising his glass, and we are all familiar with this here in Vietnam most particularly, when there are toasts to be made, and your host is raising the glass to toast you, then you do not drink yourself. Whoever is being toasted, whoever is the party receiving the toast and the raising of the glass, they do not drink. They, in return, will have their time to respond back and make a toast to their host, and then they can drink. I think this is general protocol, but in business, this etiquette is very, very important. And if you are polished in business etiquette, then that means your image is quite high. Your image is very, very good. Sometimes, and this is protocol, but sometimes it does vary, normally pass to the right and do not help yourself first. Don't always be the one to take the food first. It is good that you offer it to other people. That is just being polite and being courteous. And if you want to pass the salt, pass the pepper along with it as well. They go as a set. People want one and the other normally. So pass those around as a set. Just a few pointers here on ordering the food. The thing in business meetings over a lunch or over a dinner is to not linger too long on the ordering of the food, generally. Sometimes it may happen that that doesn't work out, and depends on the relationship you have with your particular host or guest. If you like food, you love food, and you like to talk about food, then go for it. Do that. But generally, for most situations, try to get the menu selections quickly out of the way. Go for medium-priced items. Remember, here a company is paying, so generally we are mindful of the pricing of food. You don't need to go for the cheapest thing on the item and only one thing. Don't go to that extreme, but be medium in the pricing. Also, when you're ordering food, think about the mess factor. How much mess is this going to make? As I mentioned before, crab is difficult and it makes a mess. Sometimes other kinds of food also make a mess. Things that come out on sizzling platters, for example, that spit everywhere and that do make a mess and everybody has to watch the plate sizzle. Those sorts of things too. Generally, I would maybe steer away from it if you're in a business lunch. Follow your host when it comes to alcohol. That is the best thing that you can do. If in doubt, always follow your host. It may be that they say, I'm going to have a beer, would you like one? And then, of course, you say, oh, all right, then I'll keep you company. That's always a very good expression to have. I'll keep you company if you're going to have a drink. If they have water or mineral water or something like that, but they may say, oh, please go ahead, have what you like. Really, then I would be more inclined to follow them and, no, it's okay, I'll have water too. We have some things to get through. You could say that. And finally, don't share a dessert. This I have seen happen in many, many places where, particularly in different cultures, people become quite friendly after the meal and somebody says, look, I'm too full, but I'll share yours or you could share mine. Really, don't go down that path. Leave that meal totally to that other person. It's becoming a little bit too familiar if you do that. You're becoming a little bit too relaxed about what the situation is and what you're trying to achieve if you do that. So general rule is don't share the dessert. Even if it's offered, I would think not share it. We come on to just a couple of more things about dealing with food, because food is where we are a lot of the time in having business meetings. Some cultures love to have their meetings over lunch or dinner, and we have explained this in the other World Business Culture sessions that we have run. It's very important. It's great to have food together while we're discussing how we're going to move ahead in business. And therefore, it's important that you know how to impact your image on your newly acquired business partner. So just a few pointers. Some of them I may have said before, but they are here to stress these points. Put your napkin in your lap. That is where it needs to go. Wait for everybody to be served before beginning. If you're at an a la carte situation, if you're in an a la carte situation where people are ordering and then you're waiting for your plates to come, then it is courtesy to wait for everybody to have their plate brought to the table before you begin to eat. Don't barge in. Don't go in first while someone else hasn't even got their food. That is rude. If you're in a buffet situation too, then everybody normally gets up together. Somebody will say, perhaps it's a host, he might say, well, shall we go to the buffet now and select our meal? Oh yes, everybody gets up together and off they go. Normally, everybody comes back at the same time, they get a sense, they watch other people come back together and then proceed with the first course. That is normally how it should be. Sometimes, though, things get a little bit strange in buffets and they're hard to manage. That's why if you're having this very first important meeting, then a la carte is perhaps the way to go. So the whole event can be controlled in a better way. Next up, know which silverware, meaning the utensils to use with which food. We'll go through that in a moment later on in this session, but if you're not sure, you can always follow the lead. Watch your host. Next up, cut your meat one bite at a time. Try to not cut up everything on your plate like you were a child when you were 7 years old and that's the way you ate your food. That is really not polite. It's not polite to do that. So cut things one piece at a time. And break off small pieces of things. If you're having bread and butter, then really break off small pieces of that roll or take small bites of that roll. Don't put it all in your mouth at one time. Your host may wonder whether you've actually had a meal that day or whether you're starving. If you're having wine, hold the wine glass by the stem for white wine and by the bowl, the actual cup of the glass if you're having red. And as I said, when you're not sure, follow your host. Watch and copy. These things are some general rules. If you get it wrong, don't worry too much. But as I said, follow the lead of your host. Don't get too nervous about it. Just go with the flow and see how you can manage yourself. Things that are definitely no-nos in the way that you conduct your luncheon meeting at a table is putting your elbows on the table. Now, I know that you see this a lot. You see people talking with their elbows on the table and they're using great hand gestures, etc. That might be okay for later on down the track in your relationship. But generally, as a matter of etiquette, elbows on the table is impolite. So you keep your hands by your side, or you keep your wrist part of your arms just gently resting on the table. Things that are a little bit strange sometimes, and these days particularly, people don't normally put salt and pepper on their food before they taste it. So taste your food first, then put salt and pepper on it. This is not critical, but it's something actually to remember generally for good health. Taste your food, then you add your condiments. Talking with your mouth full also is something you need to watch. I know at times in business meetings you're watching how much time you have and you might get excited, you want to say something quite quickly, but you are eating, then please do not speak at all. You have to swallow, you have to finish what you're munching on prior to speaking. Nobody appreciates people talking with their mouth full. It is definitely poor etiquette, and it will really damage your image. People will not think highly of you, I guarantee it. And also, if you're going to take a sip of wine, finish what you're eating first. Don't sit with the food still in your mouth. This is not really the way to go. Also, if you're holding your knife, don't gesture with it, don't point with it, don't use it as part of your gesture. Tableware, if you want to use your gestures, put your tableware back on the table or on your plate, and then use your hands freely. At the end of a meal, pushing back your plate, moving it forward to on the other part of the table, indicating, well, I'm finished. Really try to avoid doing that. That's not really professional etiquette, nor is stacking plates. Stacking plates when people are finished. The waiter will come and take away your plate. Leave it where it is. So these are taboos that can help you feel comfortable if you're going up to that all-important meeting and you want to impress, where your impressions the first time you meet this new customer are going to mean that they're going to be part of your business or not. Another thing, at the business table. Making calls or answering calls at the table, generally that is not a good thing to do. If you do need to do it, get up and go away and do it in the lobby area of the restaurant perhaps, or somewhere that's a bit more private. Don't also dunk, we say, drop a biscuit or whatever into your coffee or put anything into the water to soften it. And don't also make a fuss over orders that are incorrect. If the order comes and it's not quite right, work out whether you are going to handle that well or not, whether it's important to have it exactly right or not. The thing here is you want to consider the other people who are with you. And so unless it's absolutely necessary, do just accept some things. There are some things that do go wrong, but don't make a real fuss about it, that it disturbs the feeling, the rapport that you're trying to build up with that other business person. Ladies, arranging your hair or putting lipstick on after you've finished your meal at a table, please try not to do that. Or at the end of the meal, when toothpicks are in order, people do tend to use toothpicks. When you're doing that, be very, very careful how you do it. And also, if there's anything left over, don't ask for a doggy bag. Don't ask to take it home. Maybe it's quite a lot left over. Perhaps it's a very nice thing that's left over. Unless your host is a very good friend, or unless the people you're having dinner with know you very well, then this is an absolute no-no. So here you really have to look at your habits. In professional business etiquette, you're going to have to tone down or modify the habits that you have in your own life. Because when it comes to eating, when it comes to the dinner table, you certainly do have habits. And habits are hard to break. If they're bad ones, they're very difficult to break. So try to remember, when you're lunching or dining with a customer or with a potential business partner, you are on show. Everything that you do is on show. And therefore, you do really need to be careful of your behavior and how you manage yourself at that table. As I said before, there are things about the tableware, the utensils that you use. And for some of you, and being in different cultures, there are different types of tableware. It could be that you do have chopsticks, or you do eat with a spoon and fork, or you use other implements to eat, and you don't concentrate in the Western sense on Western style habits. But for the purpose of this program, we are going to look at tableware in a general sense. We're looking at the universal language here, being that you're going to be dealing with international partners, perhaps, who have a kind of tableware that is unfamiliar to you. You, of course, do know about the utensils that you use in your daily interactions, in your daily life. So in this particular session, we're going to be looking at dealing with the Western style of dining. And it is important that you try to dine with style and with grace. This may not come to you as easy as you would like it to be, because it is a little bit unfamiliar in some respects to a lot of you, if you have not had a lot of experience dealing and having dinners with international partners. But knowing table etiquette will put you at ease. Knowing what to do first will put you at ease. You don't have to become a master of it. Indeed, when one is working or living in a different culture, it takes time, it takes practice to be able to know what to do and to do it well. But here I'd just like to give you some guidelines to show you that there are basic settings. I have had colleagues and partners from other countries who have had meetings over dinner with me, who have looked at the table and have wondered why all of this stuff is on the table. Why are there so many utensils? Why are there so many glasses? It's basically because in Western dining there are utensils for everything. We do tend to have a different way of eating, and we time our meals differently. We have reds and white wines, we have water, we have sherries, we have all sorts of beverages that go with meals. And we place things on different sized plates and use different sized tableware to eat different parts of the meal. It does seem very complicated, I know. But generally, we have a glass on the table for wine or water. We have the general utensils, spoons, knives and forks that we use to eat with. We have the main dinner plate in the center, and we have a plate on the left or just above the left where we put bread and butter. Our dessert utensils, where we have our sweets or desserts, are usually above the main plate, as you can see. And then we have the napkin on the left-hand side. Some restaurants put the napkin on the plate. It doesn't really matter. So our basic place setting is like this. Now, compared to some cultures, this is a lot. These are a lot of implements on the table. However, this is how we generally do. And if you're dining and having lunch with your international guests, then a restaurant catering to international types of food will lay the table this way. Some places do go further into formal dinner settings, and this may happen when you're perhaps going to attend a very prestigious function and you find the guest of honor, it could be a senior ranking business person or a political figure, and you will find that the restaurant or the function center will have a more formal setting. So there will be several glasses on the table, as you see, several utensils and lots of plates on top of each other. You will not really know what to do in some of these instances. And so the general rule is to follow other people. And the waiters will help you know what to do. Plates will be taken from you and you start, as a general rule, from the outside in when it comes to using the utensils. So here we see a setup of a formal kind of setting that we've just shown you. So where do you start? You can start looking at your host and perhaps following his rule. But normally for utensils, for soups, etc., for any entrees or starters that come your way, you follow and you pick up the utensils from the outside going to the inner side. So the outside soup, for example, you see is a soup spoon here on the right-hand corner. If you have something like a cocktail, a seafood cocktail to start with, then you have a small fork for that. You will see that each knife has a matching fork, and so therefore your fish knife on the right has a fish fork on the left, and you use both of these utensils. You see then your dinner knife has a dinner fork on its left, and a salad knife has a salad fork. So basically there are pairs. Things work in pairs when it comes to the knife and the fork situation. You will see that the bread and butter plate has a bread and butter knife. There's a specific knife to put the butter on your roll with. People have an individual salt and pepper shaker in a formal situation, so you don't have to pass it around. So that set of condiments is yours to use. There may be a menu card at the top of your place, indicating that what is on the menu for this particular meal. And as you see at the top of your place, there are your dessert spoon and your dessert fork. That set go together. And on the right-hand side, there are different glasses for different beverages, as we can see. We see that there is a water goblet, and water is served at every restaurant these days. People actually prefer to drink water and only water in some functions and some situations. But if you are drinking alcohol, then there are certain glasses for alcohol. If it's a celebratory meal, then you'll have a champagne flute, as you can see here. You will also be drinking wine, and of course there is a glass for white wine and there is a glass for red wine. And in more traditional settings or more other situations, people will also have sherry perhaps. This is a little bit old-fashioned. It's not so much how things are done these days, but if people do want a formal meal and sherry is there, then there's a sherry glass. This may all seem very unusual to you, but believe me, if you are going to be doing business with your partners in the UK, for example, where diplomacy is very much the rule, where there are certain needs that have to be followed, and where the British are very proud of their tradition of dining and wining, as indeed are the French, then you will need to be quite in tune with the styles and all the things that go about a table setting and when you're conducting business over a meal. Remember, in the UK, also in Australia, and indeed in France, particularly in France, food is very important, and it's an important part of the business meeting. A lot of business is done and a lot of relationships are formed over the lunch table or the dinner table. And so therefore, having some knowledge of this will help you in being able to convey a very professional etiquette, and for people to be able to see that your image is what they're looking for. It may mean the difference between cementing a very solid business partnership or not. So do have these things in mind. These things will help you escalate and be more successful in the meetings you have over a lunch or a dinner. Basically, table manners. The things to follow are to get seated, proper napkin use, ordering from the menu, minding your posture. The way you sit at the table is very important. As we said, no elbows, but also the way you keep your back straight. And also excuse yourself. If you wish to use the bathroom, always say, "Excuse me for a moment, thank you," and off you go. You don't need to announce, "Excuse me, I'd like to go to the toilet." You do not need to announce yourself that way, but just excuse yourself gently and quietly and politely, and people will know what you are doing and they will respect you for that. That's polite. It's good business etiquette at a luncheon table. So I'd like to take you through some extra points when it comes to lunch and dinner meetings. First up, don't eat with your mouth full up of food. Don't try to force as much as you can at one time into your mouth. Really only use small pieces at a time. Next, unless you're using your utensils, then keep one hand away from the other. If you're not quite sure what to do with it, just keep it in your lap. Another point which is very important, and it's an extra. Remove anything that's gone into your mouth with the same implement that it went in with, except for bones. In other words, if you're going to be taking anything out of your mouth, then you need to perhaps be careful how you do that. Sometimes the best way to do that is to excuse yourself, turn to the side, and actually place your napkin over your mouth and remove what it is. It could be that you've eaten something that has something in it, or it's a bit of a strange feel. So you do have to use the best way, and that is actually by using a napkin to remove that. Eat at a moderate speed. Don't race your food, and at the same time don't play with your food. Try to maintain some polite conversation as you go along, and also never take out your set of medicines that you have to take at that particular time of the day. If you're on a regimen of taking medicines, then do it when you take a break and go to the bathroom, or do it previously or after the meal. Don't line up all your tablets that you have to take at a business dinner or lunch. And if you must leave the table, then when you do that, place your napkin on your chair. Don't place it on top of your food or on top of the table. It is polite to just put it on the chair and off you go. So these are just some quick extras that can help you in improving your business etiquette and the relationships you have with your potential customers. We're now going to come to cocktail parties, and communicating at cocktail parties in a professional sense and using the right etiquette is very, very important. Cocktail parties, sometimes you have to decide whether it is a work event or whether it is a social thing. If it's work, then you need to put yourself in a frame of mind that says, okay, this is a business function and I'm going to conduct some business here. If it's social, then you have to decide whether you're going to be social and just have some fun or not. So you need to determine your strategy. When it comes to cocktail parties, you are going to have the opportunity to network with new people, or you are going to be meeting people that you know already. So you need to determine the way that you speak to them accordingly to your objectives and those particular people. It's important actually to not just hang out with the friends that you have there. At a function like this, don't just limit yourself to the people that you know and the friends that you have. You do need to circulate. That way, when you circulate, you are opening up more opportunities to meet more people. So this is extremely important. And also, enter the room, step to one side and survey the room first. This gives you a great idea of what you're up against. Enter the room rather quietly, cautiously, have a look around, stand at the side and survey who is there. That is a very good tactic. So that gives you a total view of who has come, who is not there yet, which people you know, which people you're not familiar with, who is the most prominent guest, etc. The next step you would take is to move towards friendly faces or already formed groups. If you can familiarize yourself and you know somebody first, then the first step, of course, is to move towards them, because that's where you can start from. If somebody does come to the group that you're standing with, and it's true, isn't it? Everybody stands in groups. We all find little circles where we know a particular person and we begin from there. So we stand in that group and that becomes your group for the first part of the engagement. So when somebody else enters that group and comes up, just like you have done previously, then greet them and make introductions. Don't ignore them. Don't shun them out. Welcome them into the circle. This is important. This is important etiquette and it's very professional. There are some tips too about cocktail parties or functions, we can say. If you want to start a conversation, if you know no one and you're a little bit nervous, what can you do? Well, if the food is laid out and people are taking a few hors d'oeuvres and finger food first, and then you see people are congregating around the food table, as they do, then this is the easiest place to start conversations. People start to talk over food. You can find an icebreaker, a small thing to say to a stranger when you're around the food table. The next best place to stand is in the middle of the room or somewhere near the food table that you've just left. But do stay away from walls. If you stand near the walls, nobody's going to come near you because people don't go near walls. People are going near other people. Walls don't have business cards. Walls can't communicate. So that is a very good rule to follow. Stay away from walls. So then you are going to start to circulate. When you are at a cocktail party or a function, also learn how to hold the napkin or the plate and the glass in one hand. It takes a bit of practice, but sometimes these things become very awkward. And if you don't learn how to hold those three things in one hand or know how to handle them, then you're never going to have a free hand available to shake hands with people or to give out your card. A good rule to follow is when you are going to be meeting people, and hopefully there are smaller tables around, high tables perhaps centered at different parts of the room, where you can put your glass, put your plate for one brief moment, hand out that card or shake the person's hand, then you can come back to holding your plate and holding your glass. Places, venues are very, very aware of these needs of people when they network. So just look around for those facilities, those things that can help you. Another good thing to remember when you are in a situation like this, moving around the room and circulating, don't overindulge in alcohol. It's easy to have quite a few to drink when you're at one of these functions. So you do have to pace yourself. Pace yourself so that you can take in a moderate amount of alcohol whilst you're trying to maintain or to get new contacts. Nobody's going to talk to you if you're starting to get a bit merry. If you've had a bit too much, then you may as well cut that as a business opportunity. Because the other people that are in the room, chances are that they've not had very much at all as well. They're observing that rule. Of course, this is depending on the situation and the kind of function, but this is a place where you are meeting new people, and therefore you have to be professional at all times. Later on, when you've established relationships, then you can get merry with your customers. Another point to do or to notice is when you are stuck with some particular person for a long time. Perhaps you feel that the conversation is going nowhere. Perhaps you are realizing that this is not the person that you really want to be talking to and you've taken enough of their conversation. Perhaps you have had a good conversation and you want to move on and meet more people. So don't get stuck. Don't stay too long and get stuck. So you have to maneuver among other people. You have to be able to find ways to get out of that situation. Has that ever happened to you? It certainly has happened to me, and I know at that time that I'm starting to realize, oh, this is too long here. I need to move around. So what are the things I do to try to move around? I try to find some appropriate words that will help me. And there are some small talk breakaway words that you can use. And we're going to go through that right now. Small talk is the opening, the middle, and the breakaway part. They have three components to small talk. We all know the openers, we've heard them, we've made them. We all know the middle, trying to keep things going to establish some sort of content in the subject. And then the breakaway, that's the point when you leave and you move on. So you can begin with openers. And openers in communication are complimenting the weather perhaps, or looking at the food, talking about the food, or talking about the current event. It could be that the function is about the winning of an award for some of the staff, and therefore you might say, wow, this is a great event, isn't it? These staff have worked really well. I'm so pleased that they have won these top awards. That could be the opener to your small talk. If it's in a social situation, perhaps you might say to the person you're speaking to, I love your earrings. Is it a family heirloom? For example. So there are different ways of opening the small talk. If there is a group, and this is what happens normally when you have a business function. There is a group where people are standing around and you could say something that would be pertinent to everyone. So you could say, how do you all know each other? Tell me, how do you all know each other? You seem to be having a good time here. That is the opening of small talk. Or you could use another phrase. You could say to one of them, or to gesture to all of them, so how will everybody be travelling this summer? These summer holidays, are you going to be travelling abroad? That's another example you could use in your small talk opener. Casual acquaintances, perhaps people that you know but you don't know too well. You could also just have some general comments. And also you could say, well, how has your year been? Or how has your week been this week? Have you been very busy? Those sorts of things are also great small talk openers. Let's look at the middle of your small talk. Safe topics, sports or books or movies, theatre, art and travel. You could begin with those. If you wish to just have this kind of small talk, you could also have questions. Ask questions, listen, elaborate with matching experience and ask again about those subjects. And the small talk middle could be also just a general introduction to you, to your company, and to what you actually do. So the middle of your small talk here is meant to sort of open the door. Of course, you are not going to achieve great business deals at this kind of function where people are standing around just meeting and networking. But you can open up certain areas of your expertise and your company, etc., to begin the process. But opening up first with a few things about the person is a very good way to getting to know each other. And then you can move on and begin to talk about what you actually do in your line of work. And from there, then you can further your relationships later and perhaps meeting up and doing some business together if that is the case. Do remember, at these kinds of functions, you are never going to be able to sign a contract. What you are doing here is getting to know the other people. And the best way to do that is through food and having something to drink together, and then getting to understand the things about that other person. Once that's established, then you can begin to talk about work. When it comes time to break away, say you want to move on and meet other people, then there are some things here that you can do, and these will help you in that particular aspect. General rule is, if you're mingling, if you're mixing around and networking, is that you stay no more than 10 minutes in one place with one person. 10 minutes is a long amount of time. 10 minutes is a time in which you can tell a life story if you're very clever. So 10 minutes can help open up the door, get the conversation going, get the introductions done, and then it's time to break away. There are some very polite ways of doing this and communicating your desires. And here are some examples. You could say to the other person, well, I don't want to monopolize you, meaning I don't want to take all of your attention away from everybody else. And so therefore you might say, I don't want to monopolize you. I'm going to circulate and move on and meet some other people if that's all right. Or you could say, I see somebody I must meet. Would you mind? I'm just going to take a few moments to go over and say hello to them. Nice meeting you. And then move away. Tell the person that you enjoyed speaking with them. Tell them that it was nice to meet them. And then discuss the next steps, that whether you're going for food or to meet the next person, etc. So you will develop a kind of script that comes when you do network a lot. Don't make it sound false though. Please don't do that. You do need to be genuine in the way that you're saying things to the people that you're speaking to.